Alright, book talk, I did it. I finished A Court of Thorns and Roses, so let's talk about it. In the first video I posted, I was a third of the way through, and I had some complaints, and people in the comment section were like, hey, just keep reading it gets really good at the end. I'll compare it to this. It's like eating a bowl of bland rice, and then at the very end you find a piece of chicken at the very bottom. The only reason it's delicious is because you're malnourished and thirsty for flavor. This section right here is the good part, and then the rest of it is just... So let's start at the beginning. Major spoiler alerts, by the way, if such a book can be spoiled. So the first chapter opens up, and it's not too bad. I'm like, okay, we got a little Katniss on her hands. It's nice. She kills wolves, and then she goes home to her gimpy father. She has jerky sisters, kind of like a Cinderella story. And then it turns out that the wolf she killed is actually a fairy from another area that can transform into a beast. And then this beast boy shows up and tells her, hey, well, there's a rule book, and you got to abide by these rules. And because you broke these rules, I'm taking you to my Disney princess castle, and you're going to have everything you ever dreamed about. And she's like, no, don't make me go to this perfect area. I love it here so much, even though I've spent the whole couple of chapters in the beginning complaining about this place. Who turns out to be named Tamlin, and Tamlin's a beast dude, and the book's describing him like he's this great and powerful whatnot archetypes of the female psyche. So now I'm thinking this is just a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. But in this case, the Beauty can't read a book because she's illiterate, but she does like to paint. So when she gets to this world, you have Tamlin, then you meet Lucian. I'm thinking, are we going to have a Team Jacob versus Team Edward kind of feel in this book here? Turns out, no. Lucian's a good guy, but it's not the love interest. And then at one point in the book, the narrative shifts because it's all written in first person, which I'm not necessarily a fan of, but she hates him all the way up to this point here. And then all of a sudden it shifts and she's like, ooh, I could see myself settling down with this beastie boy. If you want a woman to stop hating you and start loving you, all you need is some beautiful grass and a river of starlight. And from there, it's just predictable sap, like the last couple of seasons of Once Upon a Time. And by the way, the spice is not in there. But you misunderstand me. In the first video, I said there wasn't enough spice. It's not because I want spice. I don't go looking for spice. I just expected spice because of the hype. It's kind of like when you eat Taco Bell. You don't want diarrhea, but you know it's coming, so you adjust accordingly. You clear your schedule. You buy a box of tissues. It gets to the point where I think a little flavor, a little spice is coming into the frame, because Tamlin goes out to do his weird ritual. When he comes back, he meets what's-her-name in the hall, and then he pins her up against the wall. I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird, but she seems to like it, so I guess there's that kind of consent there. Meanwhile, there's a drum soundtrack in the background that in my head probably sounded like the intro to Down with the Sickness. So I'm reading this, about to draw a bath, and waiting for her to have her moment. Nothing comes. Literally. So some more of that keeps happening, and the whole time I'm thinking, Tammy boy, you got some ulterior motives here, because you put this girl in your castle, everything's going good, you're feeding her, you're clothing her, you're taking care of her, but she killed your friend. So I'm thinking, okay, there's probably a wilting rose in a back room somewhere. I'm just waiting for a talking candlestick to come out, followed by a worrisome clock. And as the story progresses a little more, I'm like, maybe it's not a wilting rose, maybe he's got bodies. Maybe he's got bodies underneath this castle. What is your story, bro? I don't trust you. Then, of course, he falls in love with her after he sheathes his sword inside of her, not my words. And there's a new mysterious character that enters into the frame, old Reese's Buttercup. He's got the looks, he's got the riz, he's got the overall, tough guy, but there's probably a soft spot underneath all of that. At this point, I found myself thinking, I'm more interested in this guy's backstory than anybody else. And then he sends her back to her house because he's worried about being invaded. I don't know. They say something and I wasn't really paying attention. Then she goes back home. Her family lives in a castle now. She has everything she ever wanted, but inside there's a hole because she misses her beastie boy. They have their minds altered to think that she went to go visit her something or other, and apparently that's not true. But there's only one character that didn't fall for it. Her name's Nesta, who I hated in the beginning, but as the story progressed and I got to learn a little bit more about her, I'm like, I want to hear your story now, too. Screw these other people. I haven't switched my opinion that quickly about a character since the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. She goes back to the world because she's worried about Tammy. She goes to the castle. Everything's gone except for one girl who says that they've been taken and now they're underneath a mountain like some sort of weird Illuminati meeting. So Feyre finds out that the reason Tammy boy brought her to the castle in the first place is because everyone was under a curse and they needed a human woman to come and lift the curse. Go figure. Now the scrawny protagonist has it in her mind. She's going to go save Tammy boy from the scary Amarantha. So she sets out. She finds her way underneath the mountain. She gets caught, obviously. And then she makes a deal with Amarantha, which essentially propels her into what can only be described as a solo attempt at the Triwizard Tournament. But the whole time, I'm waiting for Tamlin the Great to bust out and like, hey, I'm going to save you now because I sent you away because I love you. But the whole time he's just sitting there, not talking. not doing anything, but as useful as a freaking wet sock. His friend Lucian is really the only one of any value because he yells a couple things out to save her from danger every now and then and kind of heals her in a jail cell. But then, enter stage left comes Reese's Pieces and he imprints on her like the pervy werewolf did to the baby at the end of the Twilight Saga. Meanwhile, Reese's Buttercup takes Feyre, gets her drunk every night and makes her dance in front of everybody. But does Tammy come to her rescue? No, he just sits there, watches his young girlfriend dance before old fairies, paralyzed like Stephen Hawking on Epstein Island. And then all of a sudden, Tammy the Mute gets an idea and he thinks, oh, I'm going to take her into the closet and make out with her like we're playing Spin the Bottle in my grandma's basement. Hurry up, she's going to be home any second. Oh. Then old Rhys comes in. He's the only one with any sense in this book. Everybody else is about as good at making decisions as I am when I shop on an empty stomach. So she wins the Tri-Wizard tournament, mainly with the help of Rhys, and then finally Tammy the Mute becomes Tammy the Great and kills Amarantha, and then everything's hunky-dory and we're all in love, and then they go back to the castle. Long story short, it was way too slow for very little payoff in the end, so all in all, I give it 3 roses. I'll never read this book again. But, I'm about to start this one, so stay tuned.